Hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 24 of the Nerd Federation podcast. I am your host, Will Hernandez, and this is your weekly podcast for some things pro wrestling and video games related. It's a Tuesday night. It's almost 8 o'clock on April 30th. It has been a hell of a week already for me personally. It's been so the past, almost 2 months, full 2 months, I've been experiencing this pain in my chest, this constant pain in my chest, and I finally got a diagnosis today, and it turns out that the cartilage in my sternum is bruised / inflamed, which, that can happen, especially if you go to a chiropractor. And I just found this out today because the orthopedist that I saw told me that sometimes this is a result of getting chiropractic adjustments, because when you're laying down on that table that they use and that hard surface and they push your spine up against that table, that sometimes it can bruise the cartilage that's in your sternum. I also did not realize that we have cartilage in our sternum. So I definitely learned some things today, but I'm glad I finally got this issue solved, and we can finally go from there, and I can hopefully get back to health. I mean, I'm supposed to be starting physical therapy on Friday. I don't know how much I'll do of that, and then I have a follow-up appointment on the day after Memorial Day. So haven't been able to lift a weight in almost a month, which is very, very frustrating. For those who don't know me at all, I'm an avid weightlifter, and I like to do DDP yoga. Yes, I'm a big proponent of DDP yoga, and I have not been able to do any of that this month. So what I've been doing to try to compensate is, my goal is to walk as much as I can every day, and the goal there is 5 miles a day. And some days I hit it, some days I just miss it. And a day like today, where I was running around all over the Mid-Hudson Valley to my doctor's appointment, it did not happen at all today. And that's a little frustrating. So it is what it is, but I have now a diagnosis, and hopefully within the next month or so, things are going to get better. They gave me pain meds today, and that is helping. That really is helping already to help me manage the pain, because it's hard. It's hard when you're in pain as you're laying back in your bed. It's hard when I'm doing this. I have to stay as upright as possible. I really wish my chair was not squeaking as much as it does, but I might have to look into getting a better chair for this. But yeah, it's been a struggle this month, and hopefully I'm on the way to getting better. Fun news, too, is that I am recording today's podcast on my new Shure microphone. Very excited about this, because this is one of the better microphones that are out there for podcasting. I mean, it's highly rated. The Pro edition of this is used by artists. It's famous that Michael Jackson used a Shure microphone to record his music. Now, this one is a little bit lower level in that it is meant to be plugged in USB. It's got a USB option and the XLR option. And if you know anything about audio, you do get a better sound when you're plugged in XLR. But I was listening to some reviews, watched some reviews, and honestly, there really is not much of a difference between the main one of this and this particular model that I have. But yeah, it's interesting. I was doing some testing before the podcast today, and you should immediately be able to hear a difference in the quality of the audio. And that is very, very exciting for me, because one of the big things that they say, especially when you're doing a podcast, because a podcast is such audio, is that you need to have great sound, or as close to great sound as possible. So this microphone is going to help me with that part of it. And there might be I'm gonna have to make a little adjustment. I'll have to definitely listen over to this podcast and see what things sound like, but this should be, I can already tell looking at the meter on GarageBand that I'm not cracking the way I used to and going into the red. And that's just great that you can just press a button on the Shure app on the computer on my laptop, and it basically adjusts everything for me. So really excited about that. One other thing too, before I get into the stuff this week, and there is a shit ton to talk about, but I am on the verge of starting another podcast, believe it or not. And this is actually something that's been a couple of years in the making. Much like this one, this podcast itself, this Nerd Federation podcast, the concept of the Nerd Federation podcast was something I've been thinking about for a very long time. This other thing is more of a 2-year idea that a friend of mine had. And we talked about it over the weekend because I was thinking about it more, and we are going to go forward with it. And I'm going to have more details as time goes along. I don't want to say anything just yet about what it's going to be about, but I will give you a hint that it has to do with a portion of my old life when I was in journalism. It's a pretty big hint, but I think you'll be able to put 2 and 2 together. And I think how my friend and I are going to approach this, it's going to be different. It is going to not be politically correct on some levels. And I will warn people about that now, because as two people who are in their mid-40s, we have a very different view on the world than a lot of what you'll see today, in this day and age. That's not to say we're going to be disrespectful, because I'm all about respect, but we're not going to mince words on this podcast. We're going to be respectful, like I said, but we're not going to be, it's going to be a little bit different when this thing gets going. So I'll have more details on that. I actually think that podcast will have much more listenership than this one will, but I am hoping that that podcast drives listeners over to this podcast. So it's interesting. It's I've learned a lot doing this particular show, and I am taking what I've learned from doing this, the mistakes that I think I've made doing this show, and applying it to this new venture with my buddy of mine that I've known almost my whole life. And I think that's the reason why we think it's going to work. We've already got the built-in audience, believe it or not. We've been spreading the word around about this. So we've got some ideas in store for it. I'm really excited about it, but more details to come in the coming weeks. So, man, as I was sitting down yesterday and today to write out some of the notes for the show, I just thought to myself, there is always so much going on in these industries that sometimes it's difficult to determine where to start every week, because there's so much going on in pro wrestling right now. There is so much going on in the video game industry right now. There is this associated part of the video game industry because of what's going on with the Fallout TV show. And I figured, you know what? The Fallout TV show is going to be a great place to start, because holy shit, I fucking finished season 1. And let me say how incredibly awesome I thought the Fallout TV show was. And it pains me in some ways by how good it was, because I get jealous and just wish that the Halo TV show could have done the same thing. The difference is night and day. When you sit there and you watch the Halo TV show and then go and watch the Fallout TV show, the difference is night and day. The care that they took with the Fallout TV show as far as the environments are concerned, as far as some of the lore is concerned. And I'm not really a Fallout guy. I mentioned this last week, a couple of weeks ago, how I've only played Fallout 4 for maybe a handful of hours, but I know enough about Fallout to know that this adaptation that happened on the screen with Amazon Prime and Nolan, not Christopher Nolan, I forget what the guy is, it's his brother, and having Todd Howard there, which I think was a huge deal that he was an executive producer on this show. For those who don't know, God Howard, as he's referred to sometimes, is the mastermind behind Bethesda Game Studios. He is the mastermind behind the Fallout universe, the Starfield universe, the Skyrim universe. This is essentially his creation. So the fact that he was involved as deeply as he was with this show, it was almost like success was kind of guaranteed, even though I think some people were like, there's definitely this, how can I say it? I don't want to say stereotype, but there's this thing about things that are video game related. Don't get me wrong. There is definitely still stereotypes around video games. Oh, video games are for kids. We know that's not the case when you look at the people who are buying this stuff. It's fucking adults. Adults are driving the industry. That 18 to 45-year-old, even I would say 18 to 55-year-old demographic is really propelling the video game industry forward. So when you see how that ties into preferences and nerdiness and really nerd culture, it's been a phenomenon. Fallout has been a phenomenon in many different ways. Fallout 4 physical copies are sold out everywhere. I repeat, Fallout 4 physical copies are sold out everywhere. Don't forget, this is a game that came out in 2015. It's almost 10 years old. It's almost 10 years old. The fact that this is sold out everywhere says a lot. And we've seen the numbers. There was 1 million people playing Fallout games congruently at some point, I think last week in the last week and a half. People are returning to Fallout 76 in droves. And don't forget, that was a game that was universally panned when it came out in 2019. And rightfully so. From everything that I've read, it did deserve that. 2018, I'm sorry. That came out in October of 2018, as I'm doing my real-time research there. But it's a renaissance. And the funny thing is, too, when you look at the Metacritic for Fallout 76, it's at 52% because that game was so broken at launch. But to their credit, to Bethesda's credit, that game is a completely different game now, which is freaking amazing. So that's why people are, the combination of the show and the fact that the game is changed and is actually quote unquote good, it has changed the conversation about the franchise. 75, I think it was 75 or 65. I think it was 65 million people, 65 million viewers for the Fallout TV show, making it the second most viewed TV show on Amazon Prime in its history, right behind the Lord of the Rings TV show. So it was a no-brainer that they already went ahead and greenlit a season 2 of the TV show. And the way the show ended, I'm not going to get into spoilers. I'm not going to do that. There might be a time somewhere down the line where I have somebody on to talk about spoilers, but they really told a good story. I think that's the thing that really surprised me out of everything. There were a lot of different storyline threads that were happening in this show, and they tied together a lot of those very nicely in the last episode, in episode 8. And you're kind of sitting there and wondering, how are they all going to explain this stuff down the line? And I think they did. They did a phenomenal job of that. It's such a different feeling watching that show and being excited for it versus what you saw in the Halo TV show. And I've mentioned this before. I use my girlfriend as a barometer for these things, particularly with TV shows and movies that are based on video game properties, because she doesn't play video games. That's just not her thing. She appreciates it. She appreciates the nerdiness of the video game industry because she too is a nerd, and she's aware of certain franchises. Like, she knows about the Batman games, for instance, because Batman, that whole thing, like, that's her favorite comic book character. Well, more Catwoman, but she's an admirer of the Batman universe. She's well aware of things like Final Fantasy because her brother played Final Fantasy, and she knows of other video game franchises. When I'm listening to podcasts and something comes up, she goes, "Oh yeah, I remember when my brother played that game." So she's well aware of some of the video game industry. So when you talk to her and when you say to her, ask her what she thinks about Fallout, she loved the series. Now, she did like Halo as well, but you have to understand that she's going to have a different perspective of Halo than I will. But she definitely thought that the Fallout TV show was better than the Halo show. And it's more because Fallout did a great job of combining action with story. And that was something that they did not do in Halo. There was too much talking in Halo, as she puts it. There was talking in Fallout, but I think the action was so gripping on the screen and the story was gripping as well. Listen, you guys know that I've said before how much I love story. So the fact that this story was really, really fucking good and really intriguing in a lot of ways, because you're trying to find out, okay, what is the situation here with this world? How was it caused? And they explained that at the end. And man, I kind of figured some things out because of somebody who plays the games, that I knew enough to be able to figure things out. But it was really well done. And they basically finished season 1 to where they did it in a way, because they don't know when they're making season 1 that there's going to be a season 2. Like, you have no idea. You're waiting to see kind of what the critical acclaim is going to be to the show when it comes out. So, but they did finish season 1 in a way where you could have ended it at season 1, but they definitely set up a lot of nice things for a season 2. And I am so intrigued with where they're going to go for season 2, particularly the location. And I'm not going to spoil it, but if you've watched the show, you know where they're going for season 2. And it's like, oh shit, okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to go to this location for season 2. So that part of it will be interesting. Now, comparison and its impact comparison to Halo, comparison to Last of Us. I need to go back and watch The Last of Us because I only ever watched the first episode, and for whatever reason, I just stopped it. I don't know what happened. Something came up and I stopped watching it. So I need to go back and watch that show again. But when you look at Last of Us, which was universally praised, you look at Fallout, which is also universally praised. There are other shows out there that were also either universally praised or too good enough that people were like, yeah, that was cool. That was good. Cyberpunk Edge Runners. First time I've ever watched an anime. So that I thought was great. And that was universally praised. That also got people back into Cyberpunk. The Last of Us increased sales of the video game versions of both Part 1 and Part 2. You've got Uncharted movie. You've got the Gran Turismo movie. You had Metal Gear. The outlier right now is Halo. And who knows how this Borderlands movie is going to turn out. I'm a little skeptical about that one, to be honest. And it's mostly because the cast that they have in place for that. But right now, Halo is the outlier in a number of ways. One, it just wasn't that good. I think they dropped the ball as far as trying to create their own story within this universe. And I think, God, I hope that they're learning a lesson for a season 3 from Fallout. They've got to be thinking about that, the way this has been universally praised. The other way Halo didn't hit, there was no renaissance in Halo. People were not flocking to go play multiplayer of Halo Infinite. People were not flocking to stores to go buy the physical copy of Halo Infinite. I'm not even sure if there was a physical copy, to be honest, since Xbox is so anti-physical games these days. So when you look at Fallout from that perspective, it has just been this great success, and I'm really interested to see what happens going forward. The other issue now is, and this is really to tie this whole segment together and bring it to its end, is what happens to Fallout 5? And that is the big question right now. Bethesda just released the upgraded version of Fallout 4. That was already in the works. Like, we knew that was coming. It came out a week or so after the TV show, but people have been wondering. The big question has been, why did they not time a new Fallout with the TV show? Now, they made Starfield. We know about Starfield. I've talked about that game multiple times on this podcast. I am playing through that game, even though I'm not going to talk about it this week. But they were busy with Starfield. And it's funny how they probably would have been better off skipping on Starfield altogether and doing a Fallout 5 and having it ready for the TV show. Now, they're lucky and fortunate that people are going back now to the previous games. And maybe they're playing Fallout 76 enough that they're spending money on microtransactions and cosmetics and what have you. But to a man, I think and a woman, everybody thinks, wants, knows that they should have had a Fallout 5 ready to go. That being said, I said I was going to pull this all together to close out the point. And I am, but bear with me. And this kind of dives into some of the stuff that I've talked about with these websites that take things out of context with rumors and innuendo. There was a post going around the past week that Jez Corden of Windows Central had said that they're fast tracking a Fallout 5 now because of the success of the TV show. That is false. And I'm going to tell you why it's false. I was listening to their podcast, the Xbox 2 podcast that he does along with Randall Thor 19. They were making a joke. Jez was making a joke because of the rumors that were going out there that Helldivers 2 was being developed for Xbox. That's a legit rumor that's out there. Legit being that it was reported as a rumor and something that was on the table. Whereas this Fallout 5 thing was just joking around on the podcast. I was listening to it. They were saying, oh yeah, my uncle told me, who works at Bethesda, this is how they were. But people are so fucking brain dead out there that they take this stuff for fact, what he said, and they run with it and pass it off as it being legit information when Jez said he was purely speculating on his part. Guys, we got to do better. I've said that on the show a million times. We've got to do better with the spreading of the misinformation that's out there, especially when it comes to rumor and innuendo, because the problem is that this rumor stuff gets passed along and reported as fact. That's one. And two, Jez was joking. It was completely out of context. And this is the problem with people not going back and listening to the source material. And they're not doing their own investigations, their own journalism. They're just taking stuff willy-nilly and just going out there and reporting it as fact. And we got to stop doing that. Yes, we all want a Fallout 5. As somebody who doesn't even really play Fallout, I want a Fallout 5 because now I'm very interested in being in that world, even though I want to go back now and play Fallout 4 to its completion and maybe dive into Fallout 76. People want that. But please report and share sourced information and not innuendo, and in this case, a complete joke that Jez is making on the Xbox 2 podcast. All right. That's going to do it for my Fallout stuff. I wanted to transition into talking about what I'm playing this week because the funny thing is a couple of nights ago, it was Sunday night, I was supposed to drive into Boston Monday for a very important meeting at my company. And I'm not going to say what that meeting is about because it has nothing to do with this podcast. It's part of the reason why this has been a hectic week for me. It's not, I'm not losing my job or anything, but it's going to have an impact on my company going forward. Anyway, I was supposed to drive into Boston Monday morning for this meeting, and I'm laying there, and an hour or so goes by, and I can't fall asleep. I was sleeping on the couch because my girlfriend was still up, and I said I'm gonna sleep on the couch, and I'm gonna just kind of go and see if I can fall asleep and leave in the morning. Couldn't fall asleep because I was anxious about the drive and about going in on such short notice. Got up and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do this. And I didn't end up falling asleep till about 2:00 in the morning. So I said to myself, I'm sitting on the couch. I'm like, what am I going to do right now? I could watch some wrestling, had him watch Collision, or I could play something. And for some reason, it was gnawing at me. It's like, I kind of want to play Stellar Blade. Sip of water quick. Hold on. Yeah, that's some high quality H2O. Yeah, I said, let me dive into Stellar Blade. I want to play Stellar Blade. There's been a lot of hoopla around Stellar Blade, which I'm going to get into a little bit after I talk about the game itself. So what do? I've got my PlayStation Stars wallet thing that I redeemed for $20 and went to the PlayStation Store and bought Stellar Blade. So I got it for like 50 something. By the way, man, video games are fucking expensive. Like, holy shit. When you account for the $70, the $69.99 price tag, and you add the tax, you're almost adding like $8 in tax. So a game is really $77. Holy fuck. That's super fucking expensive, man. Video games are an expensive hobby. Let me tell you that. They really are an expensive hobby. So anyway, download the game, start playing it, and man, I'm enjoying it. I am really having a good time with it. I took a bunch of notes that I kind of want to go through right now, as I am recording this only for social media purposes. So me reading off my pad here is not going to really, you don't really care. You're listening to this on audio. Who fucking cares? Anyway, so if you guys recall, Stellar Blade was supposed to be a third-party game. It was supposed to be coming out for both Xbox and PlayStation, and somewhere along the lines, PlayStation was like, nah, we're going to pay for exclusivity with this for second party, as a second party publisher for Shift Up. And yeah, so Celebrate is only out on PS5 right now. I'm sure it's going to come to PC at some point. So TBD on that. And whether it ever comes to Xbox, who the fuck really knows if that's going to happen. So if you're unaware of the synopsis of this game, it's basically post-apocalyptic. And there is this woman named Eve who is part of this fighting force that's all females, by the way, which is interesting. And beginning of the game, they crash land on this planet. And big battle goes on, and this is not really a spoiler because it's in the demo. She loses a lot of her compatriots, and she's basically on her own to figure out what is happening on this world. So, I did say on Threads that I'm not far enough into the game to have an opinion one way or the other on the story. I've played now for about 5 hours. So I'm still really early on in the game. So TBD on the story, but this game is really all about the gameplay. Like, for as much as I like story, and I've heard from a lot of reviewers that the story is like okay, it's an okay sci-fi story. It's really about the combat. So that's kind of the one thing to know. Another thing too, it's interesting to be playing this game in the aftermath of Final Fantasy 16 because there are definitely Final Fantasy inspiration in Celebrate. Let me say that again. I'm having a hard time talking right now. There is Final Fantasy inspiration in Stellar Blade. And what I mean by that, the music is very Final Fantasy-ish. The enemy design is really Final Fantasy-ish. There is some fucked up enemy design. And when I mean fucked up, I'm just like, this weird shit going on here. Within the first 5 hours of this game, you come across this one, I'm going to call him a boss because it's kind of what it is. This one boss that has like, it's like part horse and part monster. I mean, there's no other really way I can really describe it because it's got the mannerisms of a horse, but it doesn't have the head of a horse, and it charges you like a ram, like a bull. It's really interesting enemy design there, and it looks like something out of your worst nightmares. You should go look on YouTube at some of the enemy design for Stellar Blade because it's really like these people were high when they when they put this stuff together. So, okay, one thing I will say, the character model of Eve. And this is something that has been a constant fucking talking point in this game. So I'm going to address that part of it. And then I'm going to go back and address something else that's happening right now in the community. Eve is based on a real life Korean model. Let me repeat. Eve is based on a real life Korean model that they scanned into the game. She is gorgeous. Go look at the real pictures of her. She is a well-figured woman, young woman. And young, I mean, she's in her or whatever. I forget how old she's not like below 18, so get your mind out of the gutter. But she's a beautiful woman. And they really accentuate the assets on the character model. And I wrote here on my notebook here, boobs. Like, that was the first thing I immediately fucking noticed on the character models for both Eve and her compatriots. It's like, holy shit, they knew what they were doing here. And that's been a controversy. There's been this controversy that we're glorifying the woman's anatomy and sexualizing them and this, that, and the other thing. Here's what I'm going to say about that. Beautiful people exist. That's just the way of the world. And men like to look at beautiful women. That's just it. It's the same thing on the other end. Women like to look at beautiful men. Women like to look at beautiful women. My girlfriend and I have this thing all the time. We go out, right? And if she sees somebody who has a nice ass, a woman that has a nice ass, she will say something to me. She's like, "Oh, that girl has a really nice ass." I'm like, "Oh yeah, she does." There's nothing wrong with that. But for some reason, it's become like taboo. And I don't know if this is just some subsection of the internet that is just outraged to be outraged. But this whole thing with the way people look and people can't look beautiful and this, that, and the other thing. It's the other way too. You got Kratos running around half naked all the time in these God of War games. The dude is fucking jacked. He's jacked beyond anything that's like normal. Anything that's like near you. He looks like the fucking Rock, to be honest. And we know the Rock's not normal. That dude is on something. I hate to say it. That guy is on something. So this whole thing about character models and what's beautiful and what's not and what's sexualized and what's not. Now, don't get me wrong. Are there perverts out there? Absolutely. Are there perverted men out there? Abso-fucking-lutely. There's no doubt about that. But not every guy is like jacking off to Eve. Like, seriously. That's not what's happening. It's funny. I made a comment on Threads the other day when I started playing, and I said to myself, I said, yes, Eve is beautiful, but I am so concerned about scanning ahead in the game for different enemies that I've got no time to look at her ass. I just don't. It's not a thing that I'm doing because I'm concerned about getting my own ass handed to me by these enemies within a combat system that I am not really used to playing with. Because it's kind of like Souls-like in a way. And you have to do a lot of parrying. And you have to do a lot of dodging. So I don't have time to be looking at Eve's ass while I'm doing this stuff. And even when I'm exploring the world, I'm looking ahead for chests and for secrets and for these dead bodies that have codes in them and messages in them. I don't have time to be looking at Eve's ass. I think a lot of this stuff is getting overblown by a very small portion of the people out there. And that's usually the case with these things. because the majority of people that are either playing this game or are associated with the video game industry don't give a fuck about what these other people think and don't give a fuck that there's controversy. They're not even aware that there is controversy. And I'm going to get into that a little bit in a little bit here, but I want to get out of the way that, and I want to go back into talking about the game itself, because that's what should matter. That's what should matter at the end of the day. Is this game good? It's getting it's reviewing well, but people do have problems with it. I have problems with it. I would say a 7.5, 8 out of 10. Because I think I'm enjoying it and it looks good and it plays okay as far as the controls are concerned. The combat's great. But let me backtrack here a little bit. One cool mechanic here is that Eve is basically pulling the sword out of her hair. It's really, I think it's because she's wearing this exoskeleton that extends up her neck, the back of her neck, and it looks like it's connected to her ponytail. So she's pulling the sword. It looks like she's pulling the sword out of her hair. So that was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. The platforming isn't great. That is kind of one thing. This game is trying to be two things at once, I think, where there's this great combat system in this game, and I'm enjoying the combat. It's really challenging. I had to actually bring down the level last night because I was spending 45 minutes trying to beat that horse character, and I was like, fuck this. And I took the combat, put the difficulty down a notch. Basically, there's only 2 levels in this. It's normal and story. So I went down the story, and I'm glad I did that because it was giving me hints on how to dodge certain attacks. So I think now with that knowledge, I can go back and up the difficulty back to normal and see how I do with that. I was okay with the first major boss in this game. I defeated it somewhat easily. I didn't die too much. Once I figured out the patterns of the boss, you can pretty much figure it out. And I thought I figured out this second boss, but again, you get to 45 minutes, it's like, I can't deal with this anymore. So, combat's great. Platforming is not great. It just isn't. The swimming is atrocious in this game. The controls for the swimming. It's floaty. You see Eve is gliding to where she needs to go. Thankfully, you don't have to do swimming a lot in this, at least in the first 4 hours of this game. I haven't had to do it. There's one area where you have to submerge yourself and take a dive into an area to get a code. That was fucking annoying because I was having a hard time getting her to be where she needed to be to open this door. And there was another area where you have to jump into the water and push some platform against the wall so you can jump on the wall to jump on the ladder. That was awful. I must have fiddled with 2 or 3 minutes before I finally got it to where it needed to be and to jump into traverse and get to the next area. The last note that I made here was, the saving thing. Interesting. And I'll tell you why. There are 2 save areas. There are these camps that have a store, which is weird. I know it's a video game. And you sit down on a chair and it kind of restores your it restores yourself. It restores your health stims, and it if you've been hit, your hit meter restores that. Here's the thing though. Eve has this companion, right? Called Adam. Adam is controlling this drone. So he's somewhere else. So he's controlling this drone and he's with you. Adam is a little cheesy. I'm going to get that out of the way. And somebody suggested that maybe I should put the game in Korean and just read the subtitles, the English subtitles, which I don't know. I might try that tonight when I get off here. I might play for an hour before I go to bed. It's an idea. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it because I just watched Shogun in that way, to where I left it in Japanese and just read the subtitles. And it was cool. It was really cool. So I might try that. But going back to Adam and going back to the rest areas, there are like these smaller camps and these bigger camps. And in these bigger camps, they usually come after a major area. So in this, last night after the two major past couple of nights after the two major bosses that I played, you go into the camp area, these major camp areas, and you can do like more upgrade stuff to the suit and to the weapons. That's where to do major upgrades. In the smaller camps, you can buy materials as far as bombs and health and stuff, and you can also do the skill tree thing. But in these mega camps, I'm calling them, you can do more than just the skill tree and the products. You can like actually change your suit and change Adam's appearance and all this other stuff. But the cool thing that I like about the save areas is that sometimes when Eve sits, and it's happened now 3 times, once in the smaller camp and once in the bigger camp, a cutscene happens because she's having a conversation with Adam. So you're learning about their relationship and how they came to be together on this planet, exploring this world. So that kind of caught me off guard because I was like, oh shit, I really got to like sit down now every time I come to this area. I think people are going to do that anyway, because usually after a big boss battle, you want to save and you want to restock your health and stuff like that. But even in the smaller areas, I would just kind of do it just to be on the safe side. Otherwise, you might be missing some of the story beats for the game itself. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's not open world, thank Christ. At least not yet, 5 hours in. It's very like level oriented, and you do kind of run into some roadblocks as you're going along the path, but there are things where you can go off the main path and like go into areas to collect stuff. And it's really important to do that stuff because I will say one maybe minor spoiler to this is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, how she comes to the planet in a battle and she's there with her compatriots. And sadly, they're no longer there because they all died. And that's in the demo. So I'm not really giving away anything. But when you go around the world, you come upon the dead bodies of her compatriots. And you can basically take their essence in a way. There's this thing that like opens up more slots on your inventory and on your weapon system and things of that nature. So that's why it's definitely worth going off the beaten path when you can to find these things, because it's worthwhile, because you want to be as well equipped as you possibly can be for the fights ahead, because I have a feeling that this is going to get harder and harder as I go along, and who knows if I will actually, keep it on normal or go down to the story mode. So, yeah, again, really enjoying it. As of right now, 5 hours in, I recommend it. Come back to me next week when I've had some time to play it some more. I'm going to try to play for an hour or so tonight when I finish recording. So hopefully I should have more to report next week. Not really playing Starfield, and I'm kind of going mission by mission, so it's going a little slow, but I already know the story, right? Like, I know most of the story. I just need to get to the end here, and actually finish the fucking main campaign and then kind of go from there. One other thing, too, that I will mention quickly, and I'm not really going to get into it because I'm already an hour into the show, but Xbox Showcase is Sunday, June 9th. That was revealed, I think it was today or yesterday as I'm recording, and that was because Xbox did their indie showcase today or yesterday. I think it was today. I didn't watch the showcase, so I don't really know what was announced. I honestly don't care right now. I'm waiting for that June 9th show because that's going to be like, that's the big show. No pun intended. But that's the thing that everybody's waiting for. So, yeah, looking forward to that because I think that Xbox, I know people keep on saying this, but I really think that this is going to be the show to end all shows as far as announcements are concerned because it's time. It's really time. By the way, there's a show and there's a direct afterwards, and the direct is probably going to be about Call of Duty, the next Call of Duty that's coming out in November. And people seem to be excited about that because it's going to take place in the Gulf War, which I'm very intrigued about. Very, very intrigued about. So we'll see how that all goes. So that's going to do it for the video game portion of the Nerd Federation podcast. I'm going to take a quick break, go to the bathroom, drink some more water, and then I'm going to come back and talk about pro wrestling and mainly talk about Tony fucking Kahn in AEW. So stay tuned, and I will be right back after this. And welcome back to episode number 24 of the Nerd Federation podcast. I am your host, Will Hernandez. It is now raining in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I can hear the rain. Funny because I'm watching the Met game. I was watching the Mets game as I was paused here. And it's not raining in the city, clearly, because they're still playing baseball in Queens right now. So, yeah, it was hot as balls. It's been hot as balls the past couple of days. A little cooler today, even though I didn't get outside much, because yesterday was, I think, 80 degrees here, and a little early taste of summer in the Mid-Hudson Valley. But cooler today. It's going to be nice the rest of the week. So we're finally in that. Yeah, baby, it's May. It's going to be May. And we got the nice weather finally going. So let's talk about pro wrestling. And I was struggling with what order to talk about things in as far as AEW is concerned, because a lot of things happened last week. Mostly good. One thing that I thought was bullshit in a way, and the problem is that I think it overshadows the good that happened last week. So let me start with the bad, because I'm such a pessimistic motherfucker that I think that starting with the bad is probably the way to go. And so if you're probably aware by now, but Tony Khan obviously was involved in this angle with the Elite where he gets the power driver, the Meltzer driver from the Young Bucks. It's all part of the storyline with the Elite and Jack Perry and blah, blah, blah. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The NFL has been going around and recording Tony Khan because they're doing this documentary about his time being an NFL executive while running essentially what is the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world. I mean, that's not even, you can't, for as much people might hate AEW, whatever, that's fine. But the facts are the facts. AEW is number 2 right now. I mean, that's just what it is. At least in the US. I would say the world as well. So, after the NFL draft on Friday, after the first day of the NFL draft, Tony Khan is doing an interview on the NFL Network. And he proceeds to call the WWE the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. Now, this lit up a shitstorm on social media, as it usually does, because anytime Tony Khan talks, it's a shitstorm. And anytime Tony Khan talks about WWE, it's especially a shitstorm. And in this case, with this Harvey Weinstein reference, here is where two things can be true at once. And I know people have a hard time comprehending that, especially in this day and age. But I'm one of those people that truly believes that two things can be true at once. And that is the case with this situation. Yes, WWE has this situation with Janel Grant and Vince McMahon. Yes, allegedly, supposedly, and that's all they are right now, allegations. As a former journalist, that is what you are supposed to say, because nothing has been found in a court of law. Allegedly, there are people in the company that were supposedly involved in pushing this environment forward. Yes, this company in the past has been accused of not treating women well. We saw it on TV every week with our eyes. Granted, it was a different time back then, and I quite thoroughly enjoyed some of that stuff. I'm not gonna front about that. That's just the way it was. Hell, they haven't necessarily treated their talent well over the years. They're men. Look at what happened allegedly with what went down with Cameron Grimes, who was released last week. And he said that about a week before he was released, he got this call from somebody in the WWE front office, essentially, in some ways, guaranteeing him a job in the company for life. We all know how that goes. Nothing is guaranteed. Anyway, all that being said, I don't understand why Tony Khan has this need to say something about WWE in this manner. You're on a platform like the NFL Network. The segment from Wednesday on Dynamite with the Elite put AEW all over the place heading into the NFL draft. That is great. That you cannot buy. And that is how you capitalize on an angle. WWE's been doing it for years. They created the playbook for that when they got Mike Tyson involved in the Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, Steve Austin match for WrestleMania. They wrote the playbook on that shit. We all know that. But despite all this attention that AEW has on it, for what I thought is a pretty fun angle on Wednesday, and we'll get into that, he has to go on to say what he says. And to me, it just comes off as tacky. Because WWE, for whatever reason, lives rent-free in Tony Khan's head. And he proves that over and over and over again. And the thing that just frustrates me about this whole thing is that a lot of AEW fans just lap it up, especially in this latest situation, because I don't think they can separate two things. And how, like I said, two things can be true at once. WWE can have all these issues and can be taken to task for it. Completely agree with that. I agree with that 100%. But it shouldn't be Tony Khan that is going out there to shit on WWE in that way. I will die on that hill. I will. I don't care what you say. I'm going to clip this and put this on social media. I don't care. All this petty stuff that's going on back and forth between the two companies is fucking tiresome. I repeat, it is fucking tiresome. It's especially tiresome when you can argue that pro wrestling is thriving right now. Dynamite, Raw, and SmackDown are consistently the top shows on TV each and every week. Even with the decline in ratings from both Dynamite and Raw over the last few years. Dynasty had almost 125,000 buys in the pay-per-view era. I'll get into TNA a little bit later, and I'll tell you why that's important. You just crowned a new world champion at Dynasty, the first African-American one in the company's short history. World champion. But come Friday, we're talking about something completely different. And it's frustrating. And I wanted to vent that frustration and get that out there because as somebody who wants to nerd out about what I'm seeing on TV, sometimes this shit gets in the way of it. And I'm going to take the different path, not to be ironic or whatever. I really just want Tony Khan to focus on AEW, man. Really. That's what he should be focusing on. And I don't care what people say about, oh, he should be defending the company, this, that, and the other thing. Defend the company by putting out a great product. That's how you defend the company against the naysayers. Put out a great product. I get that people are going to hate on AEW because that's just the cool thing to do right now. And that's been the cool thing to do for like the past year plus. I understand that. But man, why can't we just ignore that stuff? Why can't Tony Khan ignore that stuff? And why can't we just be happy that pro wrestling is thriving? And I know some people out there are going to take umbrage with what I'm saying. I can already see it in my head. You know what? I don't care. I've made my argument for why I think Tony Khan needs to keep WWE's name out of his mouth, especially when it comes to this situation that is going on right now. Okay. Whew. As you can see, I'm really fucking fired up about that topic. As for the actual wrestling stuff from this past week for AEW, I thought AEW had a good week as far as the glow coming off of Dynasty and the big angle on Dynamite with the Elite and Tony Khan. And then we find out today that Collision had its best rating since July of last year. So that whole lead-in from the NBA playoffs and waiting to give Swerve a mic when they had a larger audience, it paid off. This is the stuff that we should be talking about. Granted, the whole ratings thing, I'm not gonna. It's funny because one day you're people complaining about the ratings for Dynamite, lambasting because of what the number was, and then we're turning around and be like, oh, they actually did a really good number for Collision. Anyway, as far as that piece of business on Wednesday with the attack on Tony Khan by Jack Perry and the Elite, was it perfect? Absolutely not. It wasn't. It was not a perfect segment. I didn't really necessarily have an issue with the Perry part because I watched that replay a few times and Perry really did slam TK hard with that mic. If you go back and look at it, he hits him pretty hard. And here's the thing too. It really doesn't take much in that situation if we're looking at it from a pure pro wrestling perspective, because Tony Khan is probably 110 pounds soaking wet. The dude's got no muscle mass at all. So him going down as easily as he did, that makes sense. Okay. The thing that I would have done differently is that I would have had the Bucks do the EVP trigger instead of the Meltzer driver. I think you still could have had the same impact of the neck brace and all that, because you've got two guys coming together and doing those knees. You're going to get your neck caught up in that. You're going to get your head caught up in that. There's going to be whiplash. I think it would have been more effective for them to do a couple of EVP triggers instead of doing the Meltzer driver. And I get it with the Meltzer driver. I hate the fact that it's fucking called that. Theoretically speaking, in theory, that would cause more damage. But the problem is that TK didn't exactly sell it well. And I get it. This is the first time he's doing it. And, they probably gave him advice on what to do and how to react. He sold the thing to the microphone to the stomach well, to the midsection well. That he sold well. The Meltzer driver, not necessarily. And the other problem I have in like the aftermath of that, I know he's wearing the brace, but he's also doing interviews and looking like a fucking dork on TV. And again, you're supposed to suspend belief, this, that, and the other thing. I get it. I understand all that. I just wish that maybe they would not have had him on camera so soon after it happened to add some more believability to this. And that's a me problem, trying to suspend my belief with this sort of stuff. But I will say overall, I thought that it was effective. It got people talking. It turns the Elite into this heel faction, which they kind of already were. But I think the problem was Okada was getting like a babyface reaction, and Perry was as well in the short time that he's been back. So hopefully this gets people to start cheering for those two. And again, I'm interested to see where the story is going. I'm invested in it. It's honestly one of the few stories I'm invested in right now with AEW. I'm curious to see what happens with Kenny Omega returning on Wednesday. I'm not going to be able to watch it live because I'm going to be in the city for a work event. But I'm wondering if this is just a one-time thing. Does the Elite put him out of it to ride him off for the surgery they're supposed to be getting? That's going to be interesting. I didn't get a chance to watch Collision and Rampage. I did see the opening promo from Swerve, which I thought was really strong. And, you got Claudio coming out to do the open challenge. And I'm like, oh, but the rankings. And this is the problem. We asked for these rankings to be back. And they just have not, it's not worked out. So maybe get rid of the rankings. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I wanted to make sure I hit up the TNA stuff because, as you all know, I am going to Under Siege this Friday in Albany, which is less than a 20-minute drive, less than an hour and a half drive here from where I am in the Mid-Hudson Valley. And I have some concerns about TNA. And it's funny, for all the bullshit you hear about AEW's dying, which is that's not true. I mean, it's not fucking true. Tony Khan has money coming out of his ass right now. So they can run that company at a loss for a while and still be good. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about TNA for various reasons. And so if you're unaware, the story that was circulating over the week was that TNA only had 500 pay-per-view buys for Rebellion. I guess it was something that the Wrestling Observer reported, so take that how you will. And I made a post about this on Threads and my genuine concern for those numbers. And none other than Lance Storm replied. And he's actually replied to some of my posts in the past. So that wasn't necessarily like a surprise. He does his lurking on there, which I think is kind of cool. He's the only one. He's the only person connected with pro wrestling that's ever responded to what I've said on Threads. So this is what he said. He said that number, if accurate, does not include any streaming numbers. It was cable TV pay-per-view buys only, and the event was available on the TNA Plus app as well as other streaming options. Side note, I bought the pay-per-view on Triller TV. He goes on. Oh no, that was all he said. I am glad, as I just smudged my glasses, I am glad that he said that. Because I kind of said as much and theorized as much on the conversations I was having with others on that original thread. And I thought that there was no way that 500 number didn't include other sources like I just mentioned. And sorry if the sound is a little messed up because I'm cleaning my glasses right now and I can't see my screen. Anyway, I'm blind as a bat without my glasses on. That being said, I do wonder about the long-term success and viability of TNA at times, especially now that Scott D'Amore is no longer at the helm, because you see people talk about it on the internet. You see people say that they're not going to tune into TNA anymore. The diehards who were there when D'Amore was starting to turn things around say that they're not going to watch anymore, or they might not watch as much. So was that factored into the numbers for the pay-per-view buys? I don't know. And I read somewhere, again, this is the internet, but there was this prevailing thought that D'Amore had mostly booked everything through Rebellion, and that now whoever is booking everything from here on out is somebody different. So whether that's Tommy Dreamer or whether Lance Storm himself is involved in this, I don't know. But that's kind of the rumor and innuendo, and I wish somebody would set the record straight about who is exactly running things behind the scenes for TNA. I have to say, I'm not crazy about the card that I'm going to see Friday at Under Siege in Albany. It just comes off as meh to me, and I know I'm going to have a good time. I love going to see pro wrestling live. My girlfriend and I are going to be sitting really close. We're going to be sitting in the second row on the hard camera side, so you'll see us. I'll wave. But here's where the card stands as of right now. I keep on looking at the Mets game. Sorry. I wish there was a way I can do this and turn my microphone and stuff so I can watch the game at the same time. Maybe I should just put the game on my iPad going forward. Anyway, so the main event, which I'm assuming is the main event, it's a 6-man tag between the System versus Broken, Matt Hardy, and Speedball Mountain. Okay. I can get down with that. I can get down with seeing the Broken character in person. X Division Championship is on the line. You've got Mustafa Ali defending against either Ace Austin or Trey Miguel, and I'm assuming that's going to be decided on Thursday, and I'm hoping it's Ace Austin. He's the better singles guy, I think, singles wrestler, so we'll see how that goes. Here's the one that rubs me the wrong way, for various reasons. It's a mixed tag match with PCO and Jordan Grace versus Steph DeLander and Khan. K-O-N. Not to be confused with Tony Kahn or Nick Khan. I'm assuming that this was supposed to be DeLander with Cardona, and there was supposed to be somebody else involved in this whole thing, but we know Cardona's hurt. He's going to be out a while. And it probably put this program into disarray. The problem is I'm so tired already of PCO and Khan that it's just I don't care. No offense to those two guys. I just don't care. That match that they had, was it a Rebellion or the February show? I can't exactly remember. It was not good. I'm sorry. It just wasn't good. That street fight. It's also because I've become very numb to these street fights. So the fact that Grace is involved here, we're not getting. I get it. This is not like a major pay-per-view, so maybe they're kind of just waiting to advance a storyline with her, with Grace, but I don't know. I just hope it's not like crazy, because I like Jordynne Grace, and I think she should be having singles matches with some of the best that TNA has to offer. So we also have this tag match war, which is probably a fucking street fight between the team of Eric Young and Josh Alexander versus Kazarian and Steve Macklin. Ugh. You guys know how I feel about street fights already. Then you've got Hammerstone wrestling Jake Something. I'm looking forward to that because I like watching both of those guys wrestle. You've got the Knockouts tag titles are being defended, with the champs and Spitfire defending between Alicia Edwards and Masha Slamovich, which, I don't really think much of Alicia as a wrestler. Sorry. That's just my opinion. And then you've got Ash by Elegance will be in action. Who knows who she's wrestling? And on the pre-show, you've got FBI. Yes, that FBI, the full-blooded Italians, will be in action on the pre-show. So, no Nick Namath. I know that he got taken out storyline-wise this past week. I have not watched Impact. I'm a very bad TNA fan, clearly, because I'm not watching the week-to-week product, and I really should try to do that. No Nick Namath. There's no world title match. There's no women's singles world title match with Grace. There's no tag team title match. And I get they're involved in the 6-man against Speedball Mountain and all that, but I don't know. I was kind of looking forward to more singles matches. There's no Santana, which I'm a little bit surprised about, that he's back and is not getting another match so quickly. So, again, I think I'm going to have a good time. I think I'm going to have fun, and I will certainly have a full report next week when I'm back. And, follow me on social media. I will be posting as much as I possibly can, pictures and videos from the event. And they announced today a meet and greet after the show. You've got Hardy, you've got Jordynne Grace, and Mustafa Ali. I don't know, man. I might have to pay for that. I might have to pay for that one. So we shall see. And yeah, so that's going to do it for this week. A little shorter episode than last week, but still really a lot of stuff to talk about. I felt, and really go in depth with some things. Really excited what I have planned with this other podcast, and I do think that podcast will help feed an audience for this podcast. I truly am thinking that that's going to work. Again, I'm going to have more details about that soon. Going to be doing a test episode not till June. So whether anybody ever hears that, who knows? And I've got some other ideas for that podcast that I'm excited to try out for that one. So stay tuned to that. And as I always say, if you watch this, if you listen to this and you know somebody who might be into it, different aspects of it, please share the podcast. Follow along on all the socials. I'm more active these days on Threads and TikTok, believe it or not. I am trying to post more reels to Instagram and getting the hang of that. And Twitter, I don't know. I've kind of lost faith in X and Twitter. I don't know what the fuck's going on over there, but I am over there as well. So look that all up. Nerd Federation podcast on everything. And thanks for joining me this week for episode number 24. And have a great week, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks.